There is really no doubt that 2022 has been one of, if not the worst year in the crypto space. The price of Bitcoin, along with every altcoin, has been on a steep decline all year. Many once prominent and respected crypto-related businesses have completely collapsed due to terrible mismanagement. And tons of people who were excited for the future of Bitcoin and other cryptocurrencies have left the space altogether, making things seem like somewhat of a ghost town compared to 2021. And 2021 was probably the best year for crypto. Bitcoin remained relatively close to all-time highs for most of the year. There was massive growth in the space, and people were actually excited about the future of Bitcoin and other cryptocurrencies. But as the price fell down at the end of 2021 and all of 2022, so did the excitement. People left the space out of boredom, or they became too busy to really worry about crypto. And by November of 2022, just a year after Bitcoin's all-time high price of $69,000, Bitcoin was down to only $16,000, a drop in price of over 77%. And that isn't even mentioning many altcoins, which had much more devastating price drops. Of course, crypto wasn't the only thing that took a hit in 2022. The S&P 500, for example, was down over 16%, and anyone who lived through the year 2022 will tell you that it just felt economically worse than other years. There was high inflation, the Fed raised interest rates, and people weren't really getting the economic help that they need. And while those macroeconomic issues definitely contributed to crypto's fall, they weren't the only factors. As we have seen throughout 2022, there were a lot of people using, let's say, questionable practices in their crypto businesses. Many of these businesses were built up like a house of cards. They needed crypto prices to stay high and new customers to continuously enter their business. And as soon as cryptocurrency markets started to show any amount of prolonged weakness, they all started to fall one after the other. First, you had Terra come crashing down. Their USD stablecoin became depegged from the dollar in May, and within just a few weeks, their entire ecosystem had become basically worthless. This was a big deal because Terra and its founder Do Kwon were very prominent in the crypto space. Terra USD was one of the largest stablecoins, and Luna, their native currency, was just one of the largest cryptocurrencies in general. And both of these coins were on the top 10 cryptos in terms of market cap, so naturally when they fell it affected everything. This led to several other crypto companies failing directly as a result of the collapse of Terra. The first of which was Three Arrows Capital, which is a very large crypto hedge fund that had a lot of exposure to the now collapsed Terra. This exposure caused them to be unable to pay back a loan given to them by Voyager Digital. This default on the $650 million loan that Voyager had given 3AC had caused Voyager to go under as well. This is a fairly big problem because Voyager was a fairly large cryptocurrency exchange that had gained some traction throughout 2021 during the bull run. And now all the users of Voyager had their funds locked and could no longer move their crypto. The good news was that another crypto exchange, FTX, was willing to bail them out, but more on that in just a minute because the collapse of Terra also saw another big player fall. Due to the exposure that the crypto lending company Celsius Network had to Terra, they also went into bankruptcy over the summer. And with $12 billion in assets under management, this collapse affected a lot of people who had crypto tied up in the Celsius network. And this sort of contagion is what causes a lot of problems, because when one company falls, a lot of other companies fall with it. But this isn't even the worst of it. After the summer had passed, things seemed to quiet down some, and many thought that maybe the worst was behind us and the crypto markets were slowly beginning to recover. But that couldn't have been farther from the truth. In November, the magnum opus of the 2022 Bitcoin winter happened. FTX, one of the largest and most well-respected crypto exchanges, completely collapsed, basically overnight. And Sam Bankman-Fried, the CEO of FTX, was one of the most well-known people in crypto. He was on the cover of magazines and was basically being touted as the next Steve Jobs or Bill Gates, but he turned out to mostly just be a fraud. And as soon as his dirty laundry got aired out, everyone bailed and everything he had built collapsed. And before their collapse, FTX was still attempting to bail out other fallen companies like Voyager, but after the collapse, these companies were left without help again. Also, other companies like BlockFi had already been bailed out by FTX, so they also were back to square one as soon as FTX collapsed. FTX's collapse kind of became the face of what had been happening in crypto all year long. Companies were pretending to be fine despite the decline in crypto, but in reality they had set up practices that only really worked in a bull market. So as soon as things went south, they attempted to patch things together however they could until everything eventually fell apart very dramatically. Bad practices are what caused pretty much all of these companies to fall. In 2021, things were easy. Prices kept going up and investors were handing out money to basically any company that was crypto related. So none of these companies were truly prepared for a sharp and immediate downturn. So when the market went down, all of these companies went with it. The pain the crypto market felt in 2022 was actually pretty typical of crypto. Bitcoin, and therefore the whole crypto market, has these boom and bust cycles where everyone gets really excited about crypto, your grandma opens up a Coinbase account, and we are all going to get rich. Then the price has a dramatic downturn. Everyone turns against crypto, and it's not talked about nearly as much. That's a really basic explanation of the Bitcoin cycle, so if you want to learn more about that, that you can check out the video I made on it, but at least you can understand that this sort of behavior isn't uncommon in the space. The big difference between the 2022 crash and other years was that the crypto space had gotten so much bigger this bull run. Everyone seemed to be talking about Bitcoin. Sam Bankman-Fried was being hailed as the tech icon of this generation, and memes about crypto were on every corner of the internet. Bitcoin even surpassed a market cap of $1 trillion, making it larger than many major companies in the United States, achievements that many considered unlikely in previous cycles. It's like that old saying, the bigger they are, the harder they fall. Bitcoin in the crypto market had ballooned into something massive, and when it came crashing down, it was a mess. Many people lost everything. Crypto companies on the stock market lost a majority of their value. People with money in FTX lost it all. And every major news channel was covering many of the shortcomings of the crypto space, some even praising its collapse. And this sort of massive downturn is similar in some ways to the crash of the dot-com bubble in the early 2000s. Any company that was internet related could get a lot of investors regardless of how practical or useful their product or service was, and many businesses were ran terribly with no real chance of profitability. Everyone was excited and thought that the internet was the next big thing. They were right, but many investors weren't putting their money into the right companies. It was a little early for a lot of the visions of these dot-com companies to be a reality. So when the dot-com bubble popped, many companies went with it, but some stayed around, and many of those companies that survived ended up thriving years later. You may have heard of a few of these companies like Amazon or eBay. I think there's a lot to be learned from the way that the dot-com bubble turned out. A lot of the garbage in the space at the time was completely eradicated, and the companies that did survive proved that they had a reason to be there. Many of the crypto companies that fell in 2022 were making extremely risky bets and weren't really adding much to the space in terms of value. In fact, many of them were lying, cheating, and stealing from their customers. So the quicker they are gone, the better. While 2022 was painful, it will likely lead to a much better future for Bitcoin and other cryptocurrencies.